We're continuing our 30th anniversary celebration for Stand to Reason, speaking with friends and colleagues of Stand to Reason, and we have next our favorite pro-life apologist, Scott Klusendorf. Scott, welcome.
Good to be here, gentlemen.
Hey, buddy.
We got a bunch of fun questions kind of lined up for you, Scott, and the first one here is,
Wait, can I jump in
Oh,
with
sure.
a question first? I'm interested
yeah.
about telling the story about how we first got connected.
Hmm.
And what I remember, two things, and you can give detail to it. I remember a breakfast with Melinda in Westchester, and I think that was our first time. And then I remember a conversation we had on the phone where you were frustrated with your circumstances, and you asked for some counsel about that. So bring us up to date on that.
Well, we had breakfast together, and the funny thing about that breakfast, Greg uses this story when he talks about pro-life issues, the example of "Daddy, can I kill this?" I can brag that I was there when Greg thought that up. We're in the middle of a coffee shop, and Greg all of a sudden stops eating, and Melinda and I sat there in amazement while he pulls out a clean napkin. He actually had one, and he begins to write out this thing about "Daddy, can I kill this?" And I was there when that whole thing was conceived, no pun intended.
Wow.
So that breakfast was actually a follow-up to us meeting for the first time at the Southern California Right to Life conference in, I believe, 1996. And I had been listening to Stand to Reason on the radio even before it was Stand to Reason. It was called something else. I'm going to mess the name up.
It had a bunch of different names.
Yeah.
One of them was the show with no name. It ended up, I think, with the Areopagus or whatever.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would listen every Saturday and Sunday afternoons. And at that time, you were on for 6 hours a weekend. I mean,
That's
talk
right.
about having to deliver a lot of content. And I remember saying to my wife, Stephanie, who is this guy that he can just get on the radio and talk for 6 hours? How on earth does he do that? Little did I know one day I'd have to sit behind that mic and fill in when you were away speaking and learn just how challenging that can be. But the storyline was we met at Southern California Right to Life, and we had I had heard of you, and somehow you knew a little bit about me. And you offhandedly said, "Hey, let's meet for breakfast." And I took you up on it. It's like, I'm not letting that pass. So I called your office and we set something up with Melinda. And then right after we had breakfast together in Westchester, about a month and a half later, I decided it was time for a career change of my own, or I should say an organizational change. And I had been working with a very effective pro-life organization that's still doing wonderful work today, but my job description there had evolved to a point where it was really no longer a fit. They needed a development director, and I that's just not my hard wiring. I'm a speaker, a trainer, an instructor. And so I called your office and I talked to Melinda, and I said, "Listen, I am thinking of starting my own organization here. And what tips might you give me about how you and Greg went about it? What do I need to know? Do I have to hire a lawyer, or can I work through Nolo online?" And the next thing I knew, my fax machine was blowing up. The fax machines, by the way, were these things we used in the 1990s. They were kind of like VHS tapes. VHS tapes were these rectangular things we used to watch movies on. Fax machines were things that spit out stinky paper, and you could actually get messages right away. This is pre-email.
Wow.
All of a sudden, my fax machine is blowing up, and I have paper coming out on the floor. And next thing I know, I'm getting a job offer like, "Have you considered working for us?"
Wow.
And honestly, I kind of had, and I won't lie, I sort of was thinking, well, maybe if I just contact these people, they might want something like this. And sure enough, here we are. Years later, looking back at that time that actually got me started with STR, time that I will forever cherish as being absolutely essential to my development.
Wow.
So I can brag, Greg, that I was there when you invented that little "Daddy, can I kill this?" story.
Well, we eventually worked on a training tool that we still have and we still use, although both of you and I look years younger because we were years younger. But what I appreciated is I had developed some of my own ideas, and you talked about one of them about how to simplify the issue and how to prosecute our own case in favor of the unborn. But then you brought a whole bunch of things also to the table. In fact, for me, it was you that convinced me of the incredible value of using graphic images to make our case. Before that, I had a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction against it. But when you made your case, and then we built that into our presentation that we worked on, which is called Making Abortion Unthinkable, the Art of Pro-Life Persuasion. And that has served a lot of people's needs over the years. And, we've been working lately with many people know Megan Allman. Well, she was also a disciple of yours, as a disciple of mine, so to speak, or Stand to Reasons, to instill good things in her, and so many other people that you've worked with and trained yourself over at your organization, Life Training Institute, LTI. So it's been a corporate enterprise of learning for both of us over the years.
Absolutely.
Iron sharpening iron.
Well, I appreciate your kindness in putting us on somewhat equal terms, but I think I benefited way more than you did from the relationship, and I still benefit from it. And to this day, I will get in situations where I'm tempted to get heated, and I'll have a Koukl moment. I'll go, wait a minute, what would Greg do in this situation? He would ask a good question.
Yeah.
So instead of me saying, how were you born so dumb when I'm talking to somebody, I back up a little bit and think, now let's try to think about being an ambassador here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Yeah. How many years were you with Stand to Reason?
I think, Greg, correct me, but I think it was 6 or 7. Let me do the math
I'm not going to be able to. I'm not going to be able to correct you. My rest of the team says don't ever use dates because it makes you sound senile. So I'm just going to trust your assessment.
And I could be wrong too. I'm 63. I'm not the 37-year-old who filmed Making Abortion Unthinkable back then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a lot of years together, and
but I still have more hair than Tim. So that's all that matters here.
How is that fair?
Germanic blood, my friend. I don't know.
Yeah. So, you spoke about how, Stand to Reason is unique in that it kind of, challenges you to ask questions instead of, yelling at someone. What would you say is kind of the most important thing that you've learned from this guy or Stand to Reason?
I would say the relativism material was absolutely foundational for me, because I think every Christian out there, you look at every issue we're facing right now, abortion, the whole wokeness problem we're facing, the transgender issue. I realize these are all related, but they all come from relativism. And Greg wrote the book on this. I know Frank Beckwith added material to that book, but it was Greg on the radio in the early 90s that I started listening to this guy who was actually engaging this destructive worldview. And it was the first time I'd heard a Christian really engage it in a way that I thought, I could use this with people who aren't going to church, who are non-Christians. And I think that has been very foundational for me. It's really helped my efforts to teach pro-life apologetics. And I find it's the number one obstacle that people have to being confident in their pro-life view. They just would be like deer in the headlights when someone would say, well, that's just your view. Or who are you to force your morality on me? That was a conversation stopper for many of them. And now to watch them, as I've conveyed the content that Greg developed and taught for so many years so faithfully, they get confident. They're not afraid of that anymore. And they know how to narrate the conversation and say, wait a minute, that's not going to fly here. And that's been very helpful to me.
Wow, that's good. Scott, man, we so appreciate you taking the time to join us for just a few minutes here and share some things that you've learned from this guy and Stand to Reason. We look forward to, the future and any partnerships, and God bless the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I'm forever grateful to you, Greg, for your mentorship, your influence in my life. I'm a better man because of it. Tim, we're going to have to wait and see if there's any impact for good, but you're in.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
That's Scott. I share the same feelings with you. It was a great partnership for many years, and I'm glad to see how you have blossomed as a professional in the work that you're doing and have gone on to pay it forward, so to speak, in the lives of so many others. Not just those, hundreds of thousands that your organization have trained in pro-life apologetics, but those individuals that you have personally discipled to go out and be lights in the darkness on that particular issue that we're still struggling with even after Roe versus Wade is a thing of the past. So good for you, and I treasure our friendship, friend.